Trey, a couple other things. We can tighten it up through the rest of these. I've got write a new targeting rule for heaven's sake as lesson number 4. No automatic buys for the 4 conference championship as number 5, and then the scheduling discussion, which we can get into. I'll turn it over to you though. Kind of land the plane wherever you'd like.
Oh man, targeting. Yeah, I'm just at a loss. I don't know how you fix it at this point, and we need player safety, but it's just gotten so far. I'm in favor of the card system, kind of like soccer, where you get a yellow card if it's your first one, and you could get a straight red if it's just completely egregious, but a yellow card, sit out the rest of the drive, something like that, sit out a quarter, and then you're back in. I think the penalty is too harsh for the crime right now, especially with just how differently it's called across the country. I'll just say that. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a lot of pushback on the no buys for the 4 conference champions. I think seeding should be seeding, and that's how every other outside of the NFL, which is just silly, and winning a division at 7-9 can get you a home playoff game. Yeah. I think, we should go by the committee seeding for those. But man, let's talk about this championship schedule, because tracking it out to January 20th was an absolute beating from a podcast perspective. Just lowering the curtain here for a second. It was a beating. Yeah. It was a labor of love, but it was an absolute beating. And we found out today that in a couple of years, it's going to be January 25th. What are we going to do? I might tender a resignation before that.
Well, I mean, hey, when the SEC takes their annual bye week, we might have to take a bye week as well.
We will need a bye week. I think
get healed up.
Yeah.
We'll send the backups out, send the second stringers out to play North Alabama, and
we'll let our wives run a podcast for the quarterfinals or something. If it's still going to be blowouts in the first round, our wives will be covering the first round. We'll be.
Hey, the people are talking. I think, and if you haven't heard what Trey's alluding to, they announced the playoff announced 2027.
So the 2026 season, but in 2027.
So not this upcoming season, but the next season, the national championship game will be in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, and it will be on January the 25th. Now, Trey, did we not just set a new low for national championship viewers since COVID?
We did.
Did we not just have the longest college football season in human history that we survived through?
I believe we did.
Putting those two things together, it's, I think, worth saying, you know what, maybe the general population got a little exhausted from college football. Wouldn't that kind of be the first flag that might come up for you?
Exhausted is an interesting word. And again, we just got through saying that 1 year is a very small data size, and we need to figure that out. But I think it's less getting tired and more just getting lost in the shuffle of people moving on to other things. We're excited about college football. I just spent the first segment of this show talking about how great the bowl game ratings were. But I think when you're playing on the same weekend as what many consider the best weekend of the NFL playoffs, the divisional round, where there's 4 big NFL playoff games, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and you're trying to sneak in on that Monday night. This year it was on a 3-day weekend. I haven't looked at the calendar to see if that's MLK Day, but you're at the end of a 3-day weekend when people are trying to prepare to go back to work. You're just up against so many things. People are ready. Some fan bases are ready, really into basketball at that point. Maybe they're going to a basketball game that night or thinking about basketball. There's just so many things that you could be competing with. And it seems like such a no-brainer. It seems like so many headaches would be solved if we just found a way to play the championship game on New Year's Day. That just seems like it would solve so many problems. It would help the transfer portal. It would help people not be as fatigued about what's going on in college football. It would help bowl season by condensing it a little bit, right? And getting people more fired up to travel. It just seems like that could solve so many problems. And you'd have a ratings bonanza. If it was a standalone game, on New Year's Day, or maybe you have a couple of other, like a Citrus Bowl or something as an appetizer, and then to the national championship. A lot of people have said it needs to be at the Rose Bowl every year. I could be on board with that. But you're talking 30, 40 million viewers compared to the 20 million that we got this year on a Monday night. You're talking easily, I think, 30 or 40 million if it's on New Year's Day.
I think access is the greatest advantage that college football could be leaning into for all the reasons that you just said. I mean, look, if you go the other way, like we've advocated for, and a lot of people are advocating for, if you start college football earlier, right, in August, to preserve the fall semester sport that college football is supposed to be, you have every fan in the country locked in for a set window of time. They know from August through New Year's Day or the first week of January, it's college football season, right? And you can compete with the NFL on a couple of weekends, or you can try to avoid that. But for the most part, you're going to have college football fans locked in on those games. You can do all of that by just bumping the start of the season up, not going into January. I mean, goodness, in 2027, we're going to be on the doorstep of spring training when we play the national championship. Like, that's ridiculous, right? We will have teams that finish their bowl game a month and a half before the national championship is played.
We're 3 weeks from college baseball as we're recording this today, and the championship would be tomorrow as we're recording this today.
I mean, that's it. It seems like such an own goal from college football, where if you want to get away from the NFL, if you want to take away the NFL, what's the root of the problem? You're not the only show in town, right? You can't monopolize people's interest. But there's an easy solution to do that. And I say easy, like it's armchair quarterbacking for sure. But I don't understand why, to the corporate C-suites that run this game now, going later into January and being a sneeze away from the month of February is somehow better than just bumping the games up a little bit into August, right? Finding another way to incorporate all these games into the month of December instead of all throughout the month of January. I think college football executives had a chance to monopolize and boost awareness and enjoyment of their sport to a historic level, and they missed it. I think they blew that assignment by deciding to go further back. Furthermore, to your point, it's in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. And I know everything in sports is going to Vegas now. I know that's, big profits for corporate sports. But as far as like an enjoyment and an immersiveness that we crave with college sports, you and I were talking before we hit record. Traditionally, we have not been on the national championship always needs to be played at the Rose Bowl bandwagon. But as this game gets increasingly more corporate, and you have the Cotton Bowl, and you have the Sugar Bowl, and you have the Fiesta Bowl lose their fun sponsors and really just become, corporate C-suites that are at the games, and the true fans are in the second and third levels, there's just kind of a sterileness, I think, to an element of that game. And you can tell on the TV broadcast, right? It's not as loud. People don't look like they're whipped up into a frenzy until well after the game has started and something big has happened. It just feels like, and in the broadcast as well, it feels like that anticipation, that Keith Jackson element that we used to have, it's gone. It's gone. And I feel like that buzz is not easily reclaimed as long as we keep playing in NFL stadiums.
Right. And yeah, if you're going to call it the Cotton Bowl and play it at Jerry World, like the beacon, the bastion of corporate greed that is Jerry World, built Jerry Jones' vanity project, then don't cry to me about tradition when you're kicked out of the rotation of the college football playoff. To me, the Rose Bowl, and again, I think I've said on this podcast that the Rose Bowl needs to get over themselves in the past, and I still think that a little bit. I think they act like we've never seen a sunset before when they force the network to start the game while the Peach Bowl is still going on so we can see the sunset in the fourth quarter like we've never seen a sunset before. But to their credit, they are the only ones that are holding to tradition, staying in their traditional stadium, the pomp and circumstance of the Rose Parade, the San Gabriel Mountains and the sunset hitting it. Like, that is the one traditional bowl game that has held on to that. So if anyone should be rewarded for that, it should be the Rose Bowl. And I think they should get to keep their New Year's Day time slot. Now, here's the other thing I was going to say, and we can move on to other things, but you know what else is going to happen if they don't get a hold on the scheduling thing and they actually allow championship games to be played on January 25th? What is going to stop a team from just playing their players that enrolled in January? Because the NCAA has lost every single court case that has involved players. So the first time that a school says, hey, this 5-star freshman or this elite wide receiver that we got in the transfer portal that's already enrolled in classes and has been for 2 weeks, why can I not roll them out there in the national championship game if I want to? Why can they not be dressed and ready to play on the sidelines? NCAA is going to lose that. There's no logical reason. It actually happens in basketball quite often that a player is maybe academically ineligible, not a transfer from one school to the other, but all the time there's players that join and are eligible to play at the end of the fall semester for college basketball. So they're going to lose that logical battle if it goes to court. And why would you not try to get your new wide receiver out there after he's practiced with the team for a couple weeks?
It's a good point. I mean, you're already seeing those early enrollees. They are dressing out. They're not wearing pads, but they've got jerseys. They're practicing with the team during the weekly practices. I don't think you're that wrong. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah,
January 9th. Okay, maybe you haven't started classes yet. You probably haven't.
Yeah.
There's your line. But January 25th, they're sitting in History 101 on Monday, and they should be able to play in that game on Tuesday if it's on a Tuesday, right?
Good for them for going to class.
Allegedly, we know they're not. But.
It's an interesting point. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Yeah, I like that idea.
You heard it here first. When it happens, when Bama rolls out a transfer wide receiver in the semifinal next year, must
credit 3 Tech Pod. A couple other things that we had a note on the portal window moving to a very specific window of time. Actually, since I wrote that in the run sheet, the coaches unanimously approved a 10-day window in January going forward. So they recognize that the portal chaos is not good for the sport. It's not good for them. You have coaches who are actively still coaching and preparing for games, and they're somehow supposed to also be thinking about their next year's roster and actively recruiting, while a team that went 3-9 is at a huge advantage if they can schedule those interviews and schedule those visits. So 10-day window in January doesn't necessarily help those teams that are going to be playing on nearly February 1st, but at least it's somewhat improved.
January 1st championship would fix that too. Everybody's done. They can pack up all their stuff and get to their new school.
Fall sport should be a fall sport. That's a good idea.
Gracious. Yep.